This instructional video is very brief, and it's just to take a moment to explain to you the different documents that are available to you on Moodle for typing up your lab report. There will be a second video that will actually show you what a lab report is supposed to look like. So on our lab report for our friction investigation speed, you will see that we have several different links here. We have a link for the lab report checklist, a link for the results questions, a link for the report guideline from class. You also have a little paragraph here regarding the results questions, and then you have a link to upload your lab report. So I just want to show you what each of these things are and just briefly explain it, and then hopefully as you begin writing your lab report you'll see how all of these things tie in together to help you make your lab report. So this first one, called the lab report checklist, when you open this one you'll see that it's just a checklist for the entire lab report. So you want to make sure that you have all portions of the lab report before you submit to Moodle. So as you complete something, you may want to check it off. So a lab report needs a cover page, it needs the purpose, the hypothesis, the materials, and they need to be in a list, the procedure, the results, and in our results section we want to make sure that we've answered all of the result questions, which is a separate document that is on Moodle for you, that the results are in paragraphs, and that the reader has been informed that tables and graphs are attached. And when I show you the example lab report in another video, hopefully you'll understand what that means. Your lab report should have a conclusion, a data table, and a graph. So that is the first document that is provided for you. The second document that's provided for you says results questions. When you open this document, you will see that it's called results. Answer these questions in complete sentences. After you finish, read through and make sure your paragraphs flow. In other words, they make sense and they're understandable and to the science concepts relevant to this investigation. Notice that it's broken down into 3 paragraphs, so I do expect to see 3 different paragraphs for your results section. Each paragraph asks you a series of questions, and if you answer them in complete sentences, then you should see that it's analyzing the information from this lab. So in paragraph 1, you are briefly describing the procedure. You're briefly describing your toy car. You're briefly describing each surface tested. You're defining friction. You are telling me how friction influences motion. You are identifying the different types of friction and identifying which type of friction was being observed. Now for these 3 questions, this is the background research for our lab, and these 3 questions can be answered by using information in your science textbook. In paragraph 2, this is going to focus on the data collected for our laboratory investigation. So it's going to ask you to describe the car in a little more detail. So in paragraph 1, you may have just given a simple sentence like, the toy car used was a metal car that looked like a Volkswagen Beetle. So now you're going to describe it in a little more detail, and you're going to, talk about the tires, whether or not the tires were large or small, or had tread or no tread, how far apart were the tires. Then you're going to give the speed for the toy car on the first surface. That surface may have been grass, it may have been concrete, whichever your first surface tested was. Then you're going to give the speed on the second surface, the third surface. You're going to identify the surface that had the fastest speed, the surface that had the slowest speed. Then you're going to explain why the toy car experienced a faster speed on the surface from question 5 and why it had the slower speed from question 6. So here you're going to tie in your knowledge about friction and how friction influences motion to the actual speed of the toy cars. And then in paragraph 3, this is where you're going to talk about any error that took place during the investigation. So if maybe when you let your car go, it veered off to the right. Well, in measuring that distance traveled, how well did you measure that distance, because it was a curved path and not a straight path. So that may have influenced your results, because your distance may not have been recorded correctly. Therefore, when you did distance divided by time, you didn't get an accurate speed. And it's okay to have error. Every laboratory investigation that we do will have error. So I do expect to see something in this third paragraph. No one should have, there was no error, because every student had error in their investigation. The next link on Moodle is a conclusion checklist. And when you open it, you will see that it helps you write that conclusion. So around the first or second week of school, we went over the sentence starters for a conclusion, and I shared with you that the purpose of a conclusion is to summarize the entire investigation. What was the investigation about? What was predicted? What did we find out? And then that very last concluding sentence is that relationship between your two variables. So this checklist just helps you make sure that you have everything in that conclusion that you're supposed to have. And it also gives you what I call the sentence starters. So you have the purpose of this experiment was, and then you just rewrite your purpose. And then it was predicted, and then you rewrite your hypothesis. Notice in the hypothesis part, you actually have two sentence starters. You have the sentence starter where you identify what was predicted, and then the sentence starter on whether or not your hypothesis was accepted or rejected. Then you have the data showed. This is just a very simple 1 to 2 sentences. You're not restating all of the data and all of the results in the previous part of your lab report, but rather just 1 to 2 sentences that summarize all of the data collected. And then you have your concluding sentence. Your concluding sentence, this is where you give that relationship between the surface and the speed. And notice in format, it says no personal pronouns, I, we, they, us, him, her. And you need to make sure that you follow this general rule throughout your lab report, throughout the hypothesis and the procedure and the results. Every time you use a personal pronoun, you're going to lose points. So you want to make sure that you type your lab report up in a way that you don't use personal pronouns. And you want to make sure you proofread and make any corrections that you need. So that is the conclusion checklist and how you can use that conclusion checklist. And then the last one is the handwritten lab report. And this was in the advanced class that I did this handwritten lab report guide. And so today in class, Friday in class, what we were doing is just writing down where we could find all this information. So for the purpose, hypothesis, and materials, all of this information was in the lab journal. And then the procedure, you need to type it. And then the results, which are the answers to the results questions, which I just finished reviewing a few moments ago. Then your conclusion, your data table, and your bar graph. So that is what all of these links are, and they are there to help you and guide you in writing the lab report. And I will have a separate video that will actually go over what the lab report looks like after you have done all of that. So you want to make sure that you have your checklist and your results questions printed out so that as you're working you have all of that stuff available to you. So again, the checklist, you want to make sure that you have all of these things, the cover page, purpose, hypothesis, materials, procedure, results, conclusion. I consider the purpose, and I'm just going to highlight these real fast, the purpose, the hypothesis, the materials, the procedure, the results, and the conclusion. All of this is what I refer to as the body of the lab report, the body of the lab report. So please make sure you have all of these things in this order before submitting your lab report.